Hi, this is Vince, and I wanted to start a pruning series, educational for anybody who's interested, to learn how to prune correctly. And it's the end of February, so this time of year we're going to be talking about fruit trees. And today I'm going to prune a peach tree and show you how to do that correctly. And before we get started, the first thing that's most important is to make sure you have the correct tools. So we have a hand pruner. Bypass pruner is the best kind. It does the least amount of damage to the bark. And you want to make sure they're sharp. I just sharpened this blade, so we're good and ready to go. And you also want a good set of loppers for the branches that might be a little out of reach. Same thing, make sure your blade is sharp. Also, for some larger branches, you want a good hand saw. This is a great saw here that I found. Works really well. And then for the taller branches, this is important. This is a pole pruner, and it's got this nice pulley system. Some of them have a chain, some of them have a rope. Really just depends on what kind of use you want. The important thing is here, it makes a nice clean cut as the blade comes through this slot right here. And this particular pole will go up to 16 feet, so I can get pretty high. And that's plenty high for the fruit trees. You want to keep them at about 12 feet at the most, depending on the tree. So, let's get started. Okay, so we're going to start with this peach tree, and the first thing I want you to see is the form of the tree. It's got a nice dome, rounded look to it. This is important. Even though we're going to take a lot of wood off, it's still important to maintain a shape, a correct shape, and then also allows you to get to the fruit more easily. Peach trees and nectarines are basically the same as far as the tree. They look exactly alike, they grow the same, they have the same habit, same growth rate, and require the same amount of pruning. Because the wood of peaches and nectarines is relatively weak, and they grow very fast, and the fruit is heavy, the trees require heavy pruning so that you don't have a lot of weight on these branches, and it brings it way down and can cause breaking. I've had trees break, I've seen other trees break for various reasons. So you want to keep the wood strong by pruning it correctly. You reduce the number of flowers and hence reduce the number of fruit, so you get better quality fruit. That's the whole goal in pruning a fruit tree. Okay, so moving on. I've already pruned this section of the tree just so to give you what a finished look would look like. One of the things that's important, and I do this all the time as I'm pruning, is I test the branches, the resistance of the branches after I prune, to see how much resistance I feel, because you got to consider the weight of the peaches that's going to be on this branch. And so I want to be able to pull down and feel some significant resistance, and that tells me that, yep, that's going to be able to hold the fruit that will form. And if you look over here at this section, you can see how long and wispy these are. That's what this looked like. And so if you can see, this was last year's growth, but it came up to about here, just like this was last year's growth from here. And I'm taking 2/3 to 3/4 of the new growth, or what grew last year, I'm taking that off. Because if I let all of this stuff bloom and let this all be peaches, this would be on the ground or it would break, and I don't want that. I want the tree to be healthy and survive by not breaking. So if we look at this and carry this theme over here, I'm going to come up, and I don't know if you can see that far away. Let me come back over here. If you see these cuts, you can see these are the buds. These big fat buds are the flower buds. That's where it's going to bloom. And then there's a little leaf bud in the middle there. I don't think you can see it, but it is there. So those are going to be the flowers that ideally will become peaches as they pollinate. The thing I want you to see here is that if you notice, the top bud is growing away from the middle of the tree. This is important. Directional pruning is important. You don't want to just come in and indiscriminately start whacking or cutting back. And there's very little wood above the buds. I might have been able to get a little bit closer, but I like, being safe and leaving about that much wood. This will grow out this year, and then I'll have more to prune. And this branch here, this whole limb is getting kind of long, so I don't want it to keep coming way out here because it gets too much leverage, even though it's strong right now. at some point I'll have to cut this back a little bit just to keep it sturdy. So coming back over here, following this same scenario, I'm going to look, this little section here is dead, so always take off the dead stuff, keep the tree looking clean. So here, and this is subjective, some of this is subjective, which way you want it to go. Do I want the tree to come this way, or do I want that branch to go this way? You know, it's one of those two. So don't be afraid like you're gonna make the wrong cut necessarily, as long as it's not going back to, like these top ones, you don't want it going back towards the middle. So for me, I'm going to take this one because I want that to come this way a little bit and fill this area. And then so now I have a general idea of what my end cut is going to be, just like if you were doing a haircut. So I'm going to continue doing these basically all the same. And you can see how much I'm taking off. I mean, that's probably 80% of what grew last year. And if it's off to the side, that's okay. You just don't want it coming up on the top. Here, that one's coming out this way. That's going to be great. There's a lot of dead back here, so we'll just cut this off. It's kind of long. So sometimes I'll pull on a branch so I get good tension and make sure that my cut is even cleaner than it would be if I didn't. And then one of the things I want to show you is how I place the blade. A lot of people may not pay attention to this, but to me it's really important so that I get the best cut possible. This is where I want my cut. Now I could come in this way and make that cut. Sometimes when I do that, even with a really sharp pruner, the bark will tear or the stem will split, and I don't want that. So I'm going to put it this way, right above the bud, and come this way, and I get a nice, clean, no frayed cut. There, getting the sun. And a lot of that too is making sure your pruner is sharp. That's really important. So I'll just finish this up real quick. Oh, there, see, I didn't do what I just told you. And sometimes we get a little fray. That actually turned out okay. At some point, it's trial and error. I've been doing this for over 25 years, you know, so you learn a lot by doing things. And I've made mistakes. I'm not ashamed to admit it, but some trees respond differently than others. Even some peach trees will respond different than other peach trees just because, like, we're all humans, but we don't all look alike. They're all peaches, but sometimes they grow a little bit differently. So this way I can control the growth, and I prune these trees every year. That is really important. If I were to let this go a year, I'd probably end up with a broken tree because it would have too much wood on it and too much fruit, and that would be unhealthy for the tree. So again, you know, I'm testing the weight here and make sure it's good. Like this branch here is really long and thin. So I'm going to cut this back here, take that off, makes it stronger. There you go. And again, we're going to come in and cut this dead off. Always looking for the dead, just to clean the tree up. And it is very common on peaches and nectarines. You're going to get a lot of dead wood every year. It just happens. Okay, so I want to point this out to you. I mentioned earlier about cleaning up the tree, getting rid of dead branches and twigs. So these inside here, these are all dead. And this, again, this is not uncommon. That one's alive. But you can tell it's dead. It's crispy and breaking. There's another dead, some dead ones here. These are all going to come out. And then this winter, this whole limb has died. Again, this is not necessarily uncommon and not a cause for great concern. This tree is in good shape. And sometimes the limb dies. It's no big deal, really. So this is going to get cut off, and we'll go from there. I'll show that to you next. Okay, so I've removed some of the dead branches, but I'm going to show you two cuts. Very simple, but here we go. This one here is dead, and it's a little bit big for my hand pruner, so I'm going to use my lopper. And I want to get as close as I can here and make a nice clean cut. And you see, I didn't have to put the whole lopper in there, just the point. So that's a perfect cut right there. And even though that's green, the twig was dead, so it needed to come off. I'll set these down. And so now this whole limb is dead, and I'm going to take this off. And I'll show you how I do that. So this is long. I could do it all in one cut, and that would be okay, but to be safe, I'm going to take it in two cuts just to get the weight off. That makes sure that helps me not do any damage to what's going to stay on the tree. So I want to do a cut here. This is what's called an undercut, and that allows me to not damage the bark when I come through on the top side. And then I just want to match that as best I can. Go slow, so seeing something like that's not really any kind of big deal. You can try to clean it up, but to the tree, there, and there's your cut. Okay, so I showed you how to remove some dead wood, and you can see how much cleaner this looks now. And you know, when I get to the other side of the tree, it will be the same thing. I'll just do the same thing as I go along. So now I'm going to be going up higher. And this tree isn't really that tall, so I probably won't use the pole pruner, but I do want to use my loppers. Just because this is bigger wood up here, it's hard to get with your hand pruner. And there's a little dead twig there. Okay, so it's the same thing going up as that was just kind of clustered there. I'm still doing the same thing, and I only need to use the tip of the lopper to get the cuts I want. And I'm still following. I want to keep this tree low and let it grow wide so that I can get to the fruit easily. That's one of the reasons for pruning, so you can get to the fruit. Keeping the fruit accessible by keeping the tree short. And this is important too. I didn't mention it earlier, but putting fruit trees in the lawn is really not desirable for the tree, because you end up wanting to cut the lower limbs off so you can cut the grass around it. And that's the opposite of what you should be doing. You want the low branches to stay and let the tree grow wide and keep the tree short. So if you put it in the lawn, you're fighting yourself by doing that, unless you take the lawn out from underneath the tree. That would be the thing to do, not have any grass under the tree. And you can see at my house here, my yard, I've got no lawn under these trees, and everywhere I have a fruit tree, there's no grass. That's really important. Wood chips are great for weed control, and so are chickens. I got chickens that come out here from time to time, and they keep us in good fertilizer. So I hope you can see this. You know, and I think I said this earlier too, if you make a bad cut, or a cut that might not be the best of cuts, just let the tree grow out, and then next year try to correct it. And I'm still being very deliberate on where my buds are to make sure they're coming away from the center. Okay, so just again, I want to show you the buds, because this is important so that you know the difference between a flower bud and a leaf bud. The flower buds are always big, and it's easy to tell on most fruit trees. On the peaches and nectarines, there are these fuzzy buds like this. And the leaf bud, see if we can, actually, here's a good example. Right here we got a fuzzy bud. I think you can see that. And then next to it is this little bitty bugger right there. That's the leaf bud. So that's just going to come up and be a leaf and maybe a new twig and stem. And of course the trees need leaves, so that's good. But that tells you where the fruit can potentially form. Okay, and then at every place there's a leaf, every place there's a flower bud, there's always a leaf bud. In the middle there's a little bitty point right there. That's your leaf bud. Okay, and that's what's going to be the stem after it flowers. So I'm still, oops, that was a sloppy cut. Ended up being okay. So still shaping as we go. Taking off the weight. Now there's a flower bud high on the stem here, but that's higher than I want to leave it. And even though these are flowers down here, you don't have to necessarily prune right above a flower bud. These are leaf buds here. So I'm going to go right here above that little bud right there, and that's going to come this way when it starts to grow. And then this kind of thing is important too. This twig here is laying very close to the larger stem. This is a problem down the road. So I want to remove this completely because the angle there is not good. And then we'll just continue. So in essence of time, the whole tree has to be done. So I'm going to move along here quickly, and then we'll come back and show you the finished result. So I'm going around the tree quickly, and I just had a thought. This is really important. Because we're going to bring it down in height, and I don't personally like to make any more cuts than necessary, it's always better to do your thinning and do your low cuts first, and then do your final on the top. So you're not cutting, say you got something long and you cut it off in the height because it's too tall, and then later down the road you don't realize, oh, you're going to take the whole limb out. Well, it'd be better to take the whole limb out first and get all that thinning done. So that's what I'm doing right now, and that's important to keep in mind. Always start low and work high, and start on the inside. I mean, get all the inside cleaned out of anything that's dead, and then the top is last, so you can have a clear shot of what you want to leave and how you need to shape the tree. Okay, so here we have the finished product, if you will. I've gone all the way around the tree, cleaned out the middle, got out all the dead little branches, this one dead limb, and actually I see a few more little dead twigs I'll clean up in a second, but you can see it still has the same shape as it had before we started, the same overall shape. It's just shorter. Now it's about 8 feet tall or so, and the fruit is going to be very accessible. Even though the tree's going to grow 3 or 4 feet this year, the fruit won't be any taller than this, and I can get to it real easy. It'll be all the way around here, nice and open, good strong branching. So I want to thank you for watching, and I hope you learned something. I hope it was valuable to you, and we'll see you the next time. Thanks a lot.